Good evening, and welcome to What's Your Story? My guest today is Lee Boulanger. She is truly a pioneer in the aerospace industry. Her rise from airplane mechanic to general manager at Bombardier Business Aircraft is a story in itself. However, prior to her professional endeavors and accomplishments, she was reared in a religious family where she was exposed to the power of faith and the Holy Spirit. Her story is how her religious background set her feet on a path of service to others. Welcome to the show, Lee.
Thank you.
Cool. So at least I got Boulanger right in there, didn't I?
You did.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your show is entitled "Here I Am, Send Me, Lord." Now, obviously, that's a quote from Isaiah 6:8. How does that quote apply to you?
Well, you know, being raised in such a large family, I'm one of 6 children. That service was something that we were taught to care for others and to help others. My whole life, I've been raised that way. And again, being raised in a family of strong faith, that was something that was impressed upon us that, you know, we had a service to do. And, you know, as a result, I said, okay, I'm ready to go. Just show me where to go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where do you fall in the pecking order of the children?
I'm number 2. I have 5 brothers, 1 older, and of course 4 younger.
Now, I don't want to seem sexist here, but you don't fit the image that I have in my head of an airplane mechanic. But I understand that's what you did.
Yes.
Tell us about how you became an airplane mechanic.
Sure. You know, I never dreamed in a million years that I would end up here. I honestly didn't. But this happened literally when I turned 16. It was on the very last day of high school. I got off the school bus and had no idea of where I wanted to go in life, what I wanted to be, and all of a sudden that knot settled in my stomach of what am I going to do? I don't have to get up and go to school tomorrow.
Yep.
And I found as I was picking up the mail on my way up to the house, there was a brochure in there for a school in Massachusetts called East Coast Aerotech, and it was a beautiful flyer. And it looked exciting. They had airplanes on it, and they showed guys working on the engines. And I said, So I asked my mom, I said, boy, do you think they take girls? She said, I don't know, give them a call. And I did exactly that. I called that afternoon, and I said, do you take girls? And they're, of course we do. And that just launched me on my way. I was really surprised. It was kind of a, what am I doing moment. But I knew that I would succeed at it because I was raised with the knowledge that I would succeed at anything I put my hand to. And of course, being raised with 5 brothers, I always was able to dabble in mechanics. And my father was always taking us outside when there was a problem with the cars, and he would show us how to fix them. And so I wasn't intimidated by that. I would not call myself a tomboy. I loved my dolls. I loved playing. I made my brothers play with me with my dolls.
Yep.
But we lived next to an airport, and so I was exposed to aviation to some degree. You know, on Sunday afternoons after church, we'd load up in the station wagon and go and sit and eat popsicles and watch airplanes take off and land. So, I mean, I was a little bit familiar, but not to the point where I thought that this would be it for me. So I really think at that moment, you know, it was just God who just said, nope, do this. It was just something inside I knew to do, and I said, okay, here I go, and off I went.
Now, how long was this school in Massachusetts?
It was 18 months. It was a very quick, very fast-paced school. It had both elements of theory as well as hands-on. So I got right into it very quickly.
And how did you describe your first job as a mechanic? Where did you get hired? Do you remember?
I sure do. Actually, while I was up there going to school, I also worked part-time so that I could eat and go to school.
Yeah, that would help, yeah.
And so part-time I was working for a company that provided what we call line service. They would fuel aircraft that would come in and take pilots where they needed to go. So I did that part-time working for them, but after I actually got my 2 certifications, which was airframe and power plant, I came back home here to Connecticut, and my first job was down at what was then called Trumbull Airport. It's now the Groton New London Airport. And they hired me on as a mechanic. That was my very first job.
So how did the guys react to you walking in there with your toolkit and ready to go? How were you received?
You know, I have to say that I've always been very well received, no matter where I've worked. And I've only worked 2 places as a mechanic. I worked very briefly for 1 year there, and then the rest of my career was with the company I'm currently with. And I found that in aviation, it's comprised of people who are very passionate about what they do, very passionate. And, you know, when it comes to gender, it really doesn't play a factor if you have that same passion. People see it in you and they expect you to be competent and have integrity. And if you have that, that's all you need. And so I've always been very successful because I do have those things. I do have integrity. I expect integrity from the people I work with, and very competent because I love what I do. And so I was well received. And of course, growing up with 5 brothers, I had that mentality because yes, women do think differently than men. We are programmed differently.
Yes, we are. We're wired differently.
Yes, we are. But I knew how to relate and how to present myself and communicate. So I think that was a definite benefit.
You told a story about crawling into fuel tanks.
Oh, yes.
Tell my audience about that and what you did and later what you came to realize, oh my God.
Sure. So, when my very first job with the company that I work for now, it was very interesting because it was before I had my children. So I was much slimmer back then, and we it happened to be at a time where we had aircraft that had a lot of work that needed to be done inside the wings, in the fuel tanks.
Yes.
And they took one look at me, that's you.
You
and
filled the bill.
I did. And my first 2 years there at the company were spent inside, literally working inside the fuel tanks all night long. I was on second shift at the time. And
actually inside the fuel tank.
Completely inside. In other words, when it came break time, they'd knock on the bottom of the wing, Lee, time for break. And I remember one night they forgot me, and I came crawling out a while later, and they're like, "Oh, we didn't know you were up in there." And, it was the mercy of God that I have healthy children today because back
So what
then,
protective gear did you have?
None at that time.
Nothing.
None at that time.
So you're breathing those fumes.
Yes, and in it soaked, if you ask my children what they remember most about their young years was Mom coming home smelling like jet fuel. Times have changed and we are much more safety conscious now.
So have you seen an increase in women in aerospace since the time you began?
Yes.
And where have you really seen that?
Yes, well, when I first began, I was the only one for many years, and then there were 1 or 2 that would come and go for various reasons.
Yes.
But now, in the past, I would say the past 5 to 8 years, a great increase. And I know that...
what happened 5 or 8 years ago that would lead to that, do you know?
I believe that we're doing a better job of advertising aviation and the careers and exactly what they entail. For so many, when you hear the word mechanic, you think dirty, greasy, hard, and that's not aviation at all. Today, we are cutting edge technology. It's a very clean environment, very high tech. So it appeals to much more of a wider base of men and women. And of course, I've made sure that myself and my team are doing our part out there in the local schools, events, and showing young women that this is a wonderful career opportunity for them.
To actually go to schools and give presentations to groups, but young women too?
We do. We're involved in our local high schools up around the Windsor Locks area.
Yes.
We hold mock interviews because it's more than just telling them about the opportunities in aviation. It's preparing them for their first job. We hope that it will be in aviation, but that whole experience of going through a job interview and questions and how to present themselves is very critical for that age group. But more importantly, we're seeing a time in the world where technical skills are really hurting here in America. We don't have as much as we used to, and of course there's a great demand for pilots and mechanics. So, I was at the school here close by recently, and the kids were saying, "Wow, we didn't even know you were there," and here we are in their backyard.
Yeah.
and the opportunities, because it's not something that you'll turn on your television set and see advertisements for a career in aviation.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
No. So we're getting the word out, and that's so important for the young people today to know that this is an exciting career.
So did you ever want to be a pilot?
I did, and I became one.
Oh, you are a pilot. I didn't know that. So what do you fly?
Well, I got my pilot's license back when I was going through A&P school to get my airframe.
Now,
and power
for the
plant.
listening audience, what's A&P? What does it mean?
Airframe and power plant. There are two certifications that are required to work either on the engine or the airframe.
Okay.
And they're two separate certifications.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and I did, but I don't know where I found the time in between working and going to school, but I did. And I did get a pilot's license for what we call single engine land, so that's a small airplane. And that was an exciting time, but I quickly realized that my true passion didn't lie with flying, but rather fixing them and working with people, which evolved into leadership over the years, and that has been my career path.
So when you fly, you go up by yourself?
No, I don't fly. I haven't flown in years, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I flew back when I was younger with my husband, and he's a pilot also and a mechanic. In fact, that's how we met.
Okay.
And he flies gliders also. That's airplanes without engines.
Yeah, I see those things.
Yes.
I'm not fond of those things. Yeah.
So that's not an active part of my life now.
So you haven't flown in a while, and you probably won't. Okay.
No.
But did you ever go up by yourself?
Oh, yes.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yes. Lord, I remember my first cross country that I had to solo.
3,000 miles.
I was out there flying around, and of course, north in the Northeast, it's green. There's not a lot of landmarks. And for one moment, I panicked, and I was like, where am I? And I was, I really just had to stop and be calm and say, Lord, give me wisdom. I have no idea where I am. And he did. And before you know it, I said, I think I recognize that airport. But that was an interesting experience. But I did fly solo.
Now, as we said at the top of the show, your episode here is called "Here I Am, Send Me, Lord" from Isaiah. Mm-hmm. Your family has quite a connection with Haiti. Would you please tell the viewing audience about that and how that impacted you and set your feet on the path?
Sure. I became familiar with Haiti when I was very young. My grandmother there was an orphanage in Haiti, and she would go there every year. I also have an aunt who married a Haitian, and they lived there. He operated a gas station in just out of Port-au-Prince, and they would work together. So every winter she would fly down there and work with these children with my aunt, and then she'd come home for the summer times, and she'd spend the entire summer sewing clothes that she would take back there to the children in the winter. And one year I said, Grandma, I'd like to go with you. And that I was very young, 14.
Yes.
And we worked that out. So I went down there, and that was quite an experience, flying down there alone into a strange country. And at the time, it was very, very tumultuous times in Haiti.
Sure.
And that was my first exposure to another side of life that I had no idea existed.
And what was that side that you saw for the very first time?
There was a lot of poverty, and of course children that had no families, no parents, and that, at such a young age, that made a very big impression on me. And my grandma, just, the selflessness year after year to go and care for those that didn't have, that really hit me and said, this I have, and therefore I need to share. And so I've always been willing to do that. And over the years, it's really evolved with my career into mentorship for young people and helping them to really feel like they can have a purpose in life and a wonderful career and just be fulfilled in what they do.
I spoke with you earlier, and you mentioned that you didn't think young people had hope, that they seem hopeless and they don't have a rudder or a compass. Mm-hmm. Why is that? What do you think?
Many do. I see today when I'm speaking with young folks that, it's so much different than when I was young or when my parents were young, and we really grew up in more of a family unit, if you will.
Yes, indeed.
Today, so many parents, just by the economy, are driven to work, 2 jobs, and the same attention is not sometimes always there to guide children and to help them make decisions.
So it's the economy.
It really is. It's very difficult to survive unless both parents are working. And there's so much pressure on young folks today. Their minds are very impressionable, and they've got social media coming at them. They've got peer pressure. They've got the news of all that's going on in the world. And their minds are trying to connect the dots. And to do that successfully, they need strong leadership and mentorship to guide them through those waters.
And have you seen the fruits of your victories out there yet? Any young people come back and call you and say, hey?
I have. It's this partnership that we have with some of the local schools. We've actually hired those kids on as employees, and they have become so successful. And it's just, very satisfying to see that,
That's quite remarkable, Lee. I got to tell you,
Yeah.
that's very impressive.
Yeah.
Very impressive. And you participated in a program up at Bradley not too long ago, Women Take Flight.
Yes.
Would you tell our viewing audience about that? Who was there and why you were a part of it?
Sure. This was really an exciting time, and we'll have these year after year. Women Take Flight, because it's a celebration of women in aviation. Aviation is not that old in the big scheme of things, and now more and more women are getting into it. And at that particular event, we were really privileged to have some incredible women there. Kristen Snow, who was the very first female pilot for the Connecticut National Guard, was there. Duchess was there, and she, of course, works with a NASA project. And they had asked me to be there also to share my story and to encourage young women. And there were many young women that came, especially the Girl Scout troops, and they're so hungry to learn what you do, and hey, can I do that? Absolutely, you can do that. So it was a very exciting time.
So did you had a large turnout of young girls?
We did.
Yeah.
We did, although we had many young men also, and moms and dads who were very curious and stopped by. And that was really exciting for me too, to have a chance to talk with the parents, because they're getting ready to guide their young teenagers into that next step. Do I send them to college? Do we go to a trade school? What are the pros and cons? Do we do both? So it was very encouraging to talk with them also.
Good, because that was a well-received presentation up there at Bradley. And the truth is, I didn't have very much idea about women in aviation. Mm-hmm. I knew Bessie Smith, who was an African-American, but I learned that in school, that she had to go to France to get her license. Yes. Because she couldn't get it here.
That's right.
So I went to an African-American history museum and saw that and thought to myself, I would have never thought of her flying,
Yeah.
Just like it was hard to conceptualize you beginning as a mechanic, and because I have that view.
Right.
It's greasy, it's dirty, you got all kinds of oil all over you. But, it's just not, that's just not true.
It's not. And, the most amazing women to me that I look up to were the WASPs, the women that flew in the war. They would actually, behind the scenes, they would fly the aircraft back and forth to the front line and, to the maintenance depots. And just women of incredible bravery. And they really set the stage for women in aviation.
Wow. Is there a Women's Hall of Fame for aviation somewhere? Or
there will be.
Will there soon be? Yeah, that's right. There will be. Absolutely, there will be. And you also told a story that had the audience chuckling a bit about your decision to get married.
Oh, yes.
What happened there?
Well, it was my first job at the Groton New London Airport. And a sky crane flew in from Bradley International and called for fuel. And of course, I was working as a fueler at the time, so I hopped in my truck and I drove over, and I hopped out, and the flight engineer was left behind. Of course, the crew went in to grab their lunch.
Oh,
this was the weekend warriors, you know.
Yep.
And so I was getting ready to hook up, and he's like, no, I'll do that. I'm like, okay. So do your thing. And then while we were uploading fuel to the helicopter, he started chatting with me, real cheeky fellow, and he said, "Hey, would you like to go out on a date?" And I was just like, okay. And for whatever reason, I said yes before I even knew what I was saying. And then I thought all the way back, I'm like, what did I do? But I did follow through with that first date. And the following week, he asked me to marry him. And we've been married for 30 years now.
That's a wonderful story.
Yes. I told my children, don't ever do that.
Don't
but
do
this
that,
is what
but
I did.
Mom made it a success.
I did.
So, Lee, tell me something. Who's a mentor for you? Who was a mentor that you looked up to, a historical figure or family figure or whatever? Who?
Well, you know, my father has been a ever-present mentor my entire life. And, you know, if there's anything that I ever needed to know or questioned, he was always there with an answer. And it wasn't his answer about what he thought I should do. It was always a scripture. And I said, I guess that's where part of my love of the Bible came from. The other part came from the fact that every morning before school, he would get all of my brothers and I downstairs, and we would read a chapter of the Bible before we started our day, every day. And so, he has been an incredible mentor to me my entire life as I look to my greatest mentor, the Lord. Every day I learn new things and new things are revealed. And that has been a lifelong journey for me. That's just, it's such a comfort and knowing that I will always have success and I will always have the things that has been promised to me because of his faithfulness, of God's faithfulness to me, to my family. And so I have to say my father has been my biggest mentor my entire life.
Wow. And your brothers, right?
Yes.
You still have all of those brothers running around,
I do.
right? So what did they think of little sis or big sis being in the aerospace industry, starting as a mechanic?
Yeah.
Did they rib you like brothers will?
Not at all.
Really?
I do have, they're all into something different. Well, actually I say that, but 3 of them are ministers.
No surprise there.
But, no, they've always said that they're proud of me and they're very curious about what I do, but I'm the only one that went into aviation. I have, like I say, I have a brother that's a minister of a church down in Georgia. I have a brother who teaches music and pastors at a church in Massachusetts, and another brother out in Oklahoma who works very closely with Rhema and teaches and plays the trumpet beautifully. Most of my brothers and I too were musicians. And
What do you play? What instrument?
Well, I grew up playing the piano and the clarinet.
All right, okay.
Yes,
all right.
And we've got a trombone, a sax, and a trumpet in there too.
So you got a little band going on.
Yes,
there.
we
All
do.
right.
And
All right.
they're good. They're amazing.
All right. What was your maiden name? Boulanger is your married name?
Yes.
What's your maiden name?
Watrous.
Spell that, please.
Watrous.
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 Okay.
And
All
I've
right.
heard that it's a contraction from Waterhouse,
Okay, all right.
back in the day.
You have approximately, the towns we cover have approximately 250,000 people we hope will be tuning in to watch this. What will you say to the young people, and particularly the girls, to follow in your footsteps and the wide path that so many women like you have trod so that others could come along? What would you say to the young people watching?
I would say find a mentor. If you don't know what a mentor is, look it up. Really, look up the definition,
Okay.
and that will help guide you to someone that can really relate to you and be responsible and know and help you along the path. It is critical to have someone that you can turn to because you can't do it on your own. We were not put here on this earth to go it alone. And that's very critical. And knowing that you can do it. Anybody can do anything. You hear it and you think, oh, that's a cliche, but no. You've absolutely got everything it takes to be whatever you want inside. And find someone that you can hook up to that can help get you where you need to go.
And that's the answer.
Yes.
That's the answer. Find a mentor.
Yes.
Find somebody that you
mentor.
can hook up with and
Yes.
get going. Our viewing audience should really know you're looking at a pioneer sitting here. Although it may not look like it, this woman is a pioneer. It's been a great pleasure for me to have her on the show tonight, but I do have just a couple of other questions. You're a GM.
Yes.
What does that mean you're responsible for? Everything, right?
Everything. And you know, honestly, it's the best job I have ever had to date, because it's all encompassing. Not only am I responsible for the day-to-day maintenance events that occur on an aircraft, but I'm also responsible for the team, their safety, the fact that I keep them employed and keep their families supported. You know, it's all encompassing.
How long you been a GM?
I've been a GM for going on 5 years now.
And you love it?
I love it.
Well,
I love it.
thank you for being here. God bless and keep you, and keep on moving forward with those young girls and in aviation and getting out there and spreading the message of hope. That's a wonderful thing to do.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for tonight's show. My thanks to my guest, Lee Boulanger, for sharing her story. Thank you for tuning in. Our stories are as different as each snowflake and are as beautiful and numerous as the stars. Everybody has a story. What's yours? Until next time, good night.